Hello, welcome back to episode 2 of the Bonsai Show. Today we're going to be looking at taking cuttings. This particular tree, a trident maple, is going to be one of the poor victims that we're going to have a go at, along with some Chinese elms. Now I have to say, this particular tree would be a great candidate for air layering, a process which I'm sure we will cover in a future episode. And we probably still will put an air layer on it. I think the top of this tree has a lot to offer as a separated air layer put in a pot. But back to the subject. We'll start with the Chinese elms. And these are pretty much well garden centre purchased Chinese elms. Nothing particularly special about them otherwise. And for the cuttings we're going to use a 50-50 mix of garden compost and perlite. From our tests that gives us the best results, although we do continue to do our best and try new mixes. We're also going to use a rooting hormone powder in this instance rather than the gel. Again, just from experience, it gives us a better result. Now we put 9 cuttings in each of these 9cm pots, so I'll quickly take off 9 suitable cuttings. Okay, that should do it. And what we're ideally looking for is some semi-ripe material, and we're going to remove the softer material at the top. Remove the excessive leaves and then cut it just below a leaf node. We're going to dip it into rooting hormone. Sorry, my chopstick has dropped to the floor. And we're going to run the first 8 all the way around the edge, and we're going to bury them all the way to that first leaf on the cutting. So I'll quickly get these other ones done. I personally find taking cuttings quite rewarding and quite therapeutic. Not entirely sure why, but it's always been one of my favourite parts of propagation. So this one's number 4. And as I said, we place a total of 9 into one of these pots. May have to take another few from this tree. There we go. I think we're getting the gist of these cuttings. It is important that whatever medium you use for the cuttings, that it holds sufficient water for the cutting to take up and support the foliage that remains on the stem, which is an equally important consideration, that you don't want to leave too much foliage. Otherwise, without the roots, it just would not be able to support that. It will dry up and die off, but at the same time will require the foliage to generate the hormones for new roots. And if the foliage is too large, it will transpire too much before the roots can take up liquid. If you feel that may be the case, you can trim larger leaves down to reduce that transpiration. This one's cutting 9, so we'll pop this one in the centre, and I'll move on to the trident maple in a moment. But one of the most important considerations is to label cuttings, not only with the type, in this case Chinese elm, but also with a date. And there we can keep an eye on whether the cuttings have worked, if they haven't worked, and next year we get to try something different. If they haven't worked this year, you can either try cuttings earlier or later, but at least have an idea why they may not have worked. So I'll pop this one into a bowl of water, and we'll leave them to soak in the water for about 10 to 15 minutes before we move them over to one of our propagation polytunnels. There comes a time here at the nursery, usually around about now, 5:30, when things quieten down and you get a little bit of time to be able to think a bit more clearly than you have during the day. It's nice to sit down and tidy up a few of these trees that we have come in. Some of them we grow on, some of them we sell, and to reflect really on not just the tree's journey, but our own journey. Just as we become part of the tree's journey through bonsai, I feel that each tree becomes part of our journey. It gives us some knowledge, some wisdom, some ability, some history to draw upon. And just as the tree itself adds to that, there are other elements from bonsai that we can bring through to our own well-being, mindfulness, and general outlook on life. So what I would say to everyone is consider how that tree behaves, and to some extent how we behave. There are a lot of lessons we can draw from the way that bonsai goes through its development, and exactly the same the way we go through our development in both life and bonsai. And one example that we could draw upon quite easily is living a more simpler life, being more minimalistic. Just as a way that a tree will drop leaves either during autumn if it's a deciduous tree, or when those leaves just simply haven't got any more to add to the development of the tree. In a similar way, possessions that we have that have brought us joy but no longer do, they will quite happily bring joy to other people. And that's just one way that we can draw upon lessons from bonsai and map that across to our own life, our own development, our own joy, and hopefully what we get out of life as a whole.